The $2 Girl. The auction yard smelled of sweat, smoke, and despair. Men jostled one another, boots grinding against the dusty planks, while the auctioneer barked his wares like cattle. The crowd wasn't here for horses or wagons today. It was flesh being sold, and the people bidding hardly lowered their voices to hide their cruelty. At the far end of the platform, chained to a post, stood a girl in tattered calico. Her cheeks were bruised, her lips swollen, and her eyes were fixed on the ground. She looked no older than 19, though hardship had carved lines into her skin. She was trembling, though not from the autumn chill that swept down from the mountains. No, her fear was colder than any wind. $2, barked the auctioneer, slamming his gavel on the block. $2 for the crippled girl who ain't worth the bread she eats. Someone buy her off my hands before the coyotes do. The crowd erupted in laughter. One man shouted, "I wouldn't give a nickel." Another added, "She wouldn't last a week in the hills." The girl flinched with every jeer. But no one stepped forward. Not until the crowd parted and a figure emerged, a man tall as the timber pines, broad-shouldered, with a beard as wild as the wilderness itself. His clothes were patched with wear, his boots worn, and a rifle slung across his back. He didn't look like the other men who lingered in town to drink and gamble. He looked like he belonged to the mountains. The auctioneer sneered. "Well, if it ain't the hermit himself, Eli Barrett. What'll you give for her, mountain man? Can't see what use she'd be to you." Eli Barrett's voice rumbled low, steady as thunder rolling off stone. $2. The laughter grew louder. "Eli wants himself a wife for cheaper than a mule," someone shouted. The girl dared to lift her eyes for the first time. What she saw wasn't mockery, nor hunger, nor cruelty in his gaze. His face was hard, but his eyes were steady, the color of storm clouds before rain. He wasn't looking at her like she was ruined goods. He was looking at her like he saw something no one else did. The auctioneer slammed the gavel. "Sold. $2 to the mountain man." The chains were removed, though not gently. The girl stumbled forward, nearly falling into the dirt, until Eli's calloused hand caught her arm. He steadied her, his grip firm but not cruel. "Come with me," he said simply. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her voice had been beaten down by too many days of silence, too many nights of despair. But she followed, because there was nowhere else to go. They rode in silence, the mountains swallowing the town behind them. The girl sat on Eli's mule, clinging to the saddle horn, while Eli walked beside her, leading the reins. The climb was steep, the trail winding higher through forests of pine and granite. The farther they went, the more she felt the world below falling away, as though she were being carried not just out of the town, but out of the life that had chained her. Her thoughts swirled. Why did he buy me? What does he want? Will he treat me like the others did? At last, Eli spoke. "What's your name?" She hesitated. Her throat tightened, but finally she whispered, "Clara." "Clara," he repeated, testing the sound as if he hadn't spoken a woman's name in years. "I'm Eli. You'll be safe with me." The words were plain, almost careless, but she clung to them like a drowning soul to driftwood. Safe. No one had promised her that before. By nightfall, they reached his cabin, nestled against the slope of a mountain where the trees thinned and the air grew sharp with cold. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, and a rough-hewn porch overlooked a valley spread wide and endless. The cabin was small, built from logs cut and fitted by his own hands. Inside, it was sparse, a bed, a rough table, shelves of tools and traps, and a fire glowing in the hearth. Eli brought her inside, lit a lantern, and set about preparing food without a word. Clara stood in the doorway, unsure if she belonged in this place at all. She felt like a trespasser in someone else's solitude. "Sit," Eli said, nodding toward the chair. She obeyed, watching as he ladled stew from a pot. The smell of venison and wild herbs filled the room, making her stomach ache with hunger. He placed a bowl before her. She hesitated. For me. For you," he said simply, taking his own seat across the table. Clara lifted the spoon with trembling hands. The warmth spread through her, bringing tears she hadn't meant to shed. She turned her face away, ashamed of her weakness. Eli said nothing, just ate in silence. His presence was like the mountains themselves, vast, unyielding, but strangely steadying. When the meal was done, he spoke again. "You can have the bed tonight. I'll take the floor." Her eyes widened. Men she had known before would never have offered such mercy. She opened her mouth, struggling for words. Why did you buy me?" Eli leaned back, staring into the fire. For a long moment, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Because no one else would." She blinked. "That's all." His gaze shifted to her, firm and unwavering. "A person don't deserve to be thrown away like an old boot. $2 ain't much to set someone free." Clara's breath caught. Free. She hadn't thought of herself as anything but owned, caged, or discarded for so long that the word felt foreign. But she wasn't sure if she dared believe him. That night, Clara lay in the bed, staring at the wooden beams above her. She could hear Eli's steady breathing from where he slept by the fire. Every creak of the cabin, every howl of the wind outside, made her wonder if this peace was only a dream that would vanish by morning. Yet, as the firelight flickered across the room, she realized something she hadn't felt in years. For the first time since she was a child, she wasn't afraid. And she didn't know what frightened her more, the fear she'd carried all her life, or the hope daring to replace it. The mountain teaches love. Morning in the high country broke with a wash of pale gold spilling over the ridges. The air was sharp, laced with pine and the faint smoke of embers still glowing in the hearth. Clara woke to birdsong, her body stiff from the softness of a bed she had not known in years. For a fleeting moment, she forgot where she was. Then her eyes found the rough-hewn rafters, the cabin walls, and the figure by the fire. Eli was already awake, sharpening a knife on a whetstone, his movements steady, unhurried. She pushed herself upright, heart quickening. He really did sleep on the floor, she realized, the blanket folded neatly where he had lain. No chains. No harsh orders. Just quiet. "You hungry?" Eli's voice broke the silence. Clara nodded. He rose, poured water into a pot, and set it over the flames. The smell of coffee and oats soon filled the cabin. It was nothing fancy, but Clara ate as though every bite were a miracle. Eli watched her only once, then returned to his work, carving strips of rawhide. After a while, she dared to ask, "What do you expect me to do here?" His eyes lifted to hers. "Whatever you're able. Help if you can. Rest if you need. The mountain'll teach you the rest." His words puzzled her. Most men she had known had been quick to demand, to take, to remind her of her worthlessness. Eli demanded nothing. His silence was both unsettling and strangely merciful. Learning the mountain. Days turned into weeks. Clara found herself falling into the rhythm of the wilderness. At first, her hands were clumsy, unused to useful work. But Eli was patient. He showed her how to gather firewood without splintering her palms, how to set snares for rabbits, how to stir stew without scorching the pot. She remembered one afternoon vividly. She had tried splitting logs with the axe, only for it to lodge crooked in the wood. Frustration burned hot in her chest. She wanted to scream, to throw the axe, to prove she was as useless as everyone had said. Eli walked over, his shadow long across the yard. Without a word, he pulled the axe free and placed it back in her hands. His voice was calm, almost quiet. "Don't fight the wood. Let the grain tell you where it wants to break." He guided her hands, steadying the swing. The log split clean in two. Clara's eyes widened, a small gasp escaping. For the first time, she felt capable. Eli gave a small nod, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "See, you're stronger than you think." His words stayed with her long after the sun set. Stronger than she thought. No one had ever told her that before. The walls between them. Yet, despite the quiet kindness, Clara could feel the walls Eli kept around his heart. At night, when the fire burned low, she would sometimes glimpse him staring into the flames, his eyes heavy with shadows. He never spoke of his past, never mentioned family or friends. The mountain was his home, but it also seemed his prison. One evening, curiosity overcame her fear. "Eli," she whispered, "why do you live up here alone?" For a long time, he didn't answer. She thought perhaps he hadn't heard, or that he would ignore her. But finally, his voice came low and rough. "Because folks down there take more than they give. Up here, the mountain takes only what you're willing to fight for." Clara hesitated. "And me? Why bring me here?" He looked at her then, his gaze steady, unreadable. "Because I saw a woman everyone else had given up on. And I don't reckon I could stand by and let that be the end of her story." Her chest tightened. No one had ever spoken of her as if she still had a story worth telling. She turned away quickly, tears stinging her eyes. The storm. Winter came early to the high country. One night, a storm swept down from the peaks, roaring against the cabin walls. Snow piled high, the wind howling like wolves. The fire sputtered. Clara shivered, clutching the thin quilt. Eli noticed. Without a word, he rose, took another blanket from the trunk, and draped it over her shoulders. But when her teeth still chattered, he hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed. "The cold'll bite deep if you don't share warmth," he muttered, almost embarrassed. Her breath caught. Memories of men who had taken without asking flashed in her mind, fear rising like bile. But Eli did not touch her. He sat stiffly, leaving the choice to her. Slowly, trembling, she leaned against him. His arm came around her, steady and protective. No hunger in his touch. Only warmth. Only safety. The storm raged outside, but for the first time, Clara felt the fear loosening its grip. She drifted to sleep against him, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. What it meant to love. By spring, Clara was no longer the broken girl who had been sold for $2. Her cheeks had color, her hands bore the calluses of work, and her eyes held sparks of quiet strength. One morning, she was tending the garden patch Eli had helped her plant when she caught him watching her. His expression was softer than she had ever seen, almost vulnerable. "What is it?" she asked. He cleared his throat, looking away. "Didn't reckon I'd ever see laughter in this place again. You've brought it back." Her chest ached, full and trembling. She stepped closer. "And you've shown me something I thought I'd never know." He met her gaze, searching. "What's that?" She swallowed, her voice breaking but sure. "What it means to be safe, to be cared for, to be loved." The words hung between them like the hush of the mountain air. Eli's rough hand reached out, hesitated, then brushed her cheek with surprising gentleness. "You taught me that too," he said. "I'd near forgot what love felt like." The moment stretched, fragile as new spring grass. Then Clara leaned into him, and for the first time, their lips met, not with hunger or desperation, but with the quiet promise of two souls who had been broken and found wholeness in each other. Epilogue. The $2 Miracle. Years later, Folks in the valley would still whisper about the day Eli Barrett paid $2 for a girl no one wanted. But Clara knew the truth. He hadn't bought her. He had freed her. And together, they had built a life where love grew as wild and enduring as the mountains themselves. For $2, she had been cast aside. But in the arms of the lonesome mountain man, she had discovered something priceless.